Hi everyone, I am back with, surprisingly enough, another LTC playthrough. Although there is a pretty big asterisk on that LTC thing, but I'll get to that in a moment. This is TearRing Saga, Berwick Saga, Lasberia Chronicle Chapter 174, although most people just call it Berwick Saga because that's quite a long name. And the reason I say that there's an asterisk on the LTC designation of this run is that I have not beaten this game. In fact, as of this recording, I have not even played the second map in the game. So I'm going through this run completely blind, and that means that there's not going to be as much long-term strategic stuff as there was in my Champions of Utena run. Instead, I'm just going to be going through at my own pace, making the best of what I have. This also means that the release schedule for this run is not going to be particularly consistent, as I am uploading as I go through rather than uploading a completed playthrough like with Champions of Utena. On that note, I do want to remain spoiler free, so please do not post spoilers whether for story or gameplay on any videos in this series. So now let's talk about some of the differences between this game and its predecessor. The most significant change here is that the turns are no longer in phases with player units and then enemy units each taking their turns as a block. Instead, turns are interleaved with one another, kind of like summoner duels in Fire Emblem Heroes, except a bit different because Berwick Saga's larger enemy armies mean that they often get to move multiple units in a row between the players' units. Another difference is that this game seems to have taken notes from the Binding Blade when coming up with its weapons hit rates. They are absolutely atrocious pretty much across the board. And that means that there's a big problem with reliability in this game. Also, I'm pretty sure that this game is actually 1RN, though please do correct me if I'm wrong on that. In Champions of Utena, this wouldn't bother me so much because of the save staff, but that is one of the things that this game actually got rid of. Instead, you are able to save at the start of any turn divisible by 5, or possibly only at the start of turn 5, because I haven't seen the start of a turn 10 yet, so I don't actually know for sure. But this means that on maps that do last that long, I am going to have some ability to manipulate player phases to go as I like, but on maps that are shorter than 5 turns, I'm going to be relying on poor reliability for the whole map, with no way to influence it in the middle, and that is going to be a real pain, I'm sure, especially given how long it took me to finish this chapter. There are a number of other RNG related factors beyond hit rates that have also been something of a headache for me so far, but I will go into those as they come up in the run. So with all that said, it's time for us to dive into chapter 1 of this game. At the start of the chapter, we're going to have 4 mounted units, and on the one hand that's great because cavalry units are usually amazing. But on the downside, one of those 4 is our Lord, Reese, and because he has the same movement as everyone else, he is going to have to be near the forefront of our offense as we do this map in order to reach the siege point as quickly as possible. So my first move is to rush Ward forward. He is the Jagan of this game, and he's going to give a demonstration of how combat rounds work in this game. In this game, you usually can't make an attack in a combat round after being hit in the same round, and Ward is going to make use of that to avoid counterattacks on his turn. Additionally, you usually cannot make a follow-up attack if you've already landed an attack in the combat round. However, Ward's Knight Sword gets around both of these restrictions somewhat. I'm not totally certain on the details, but from what I've seen, it appears to add 1 attack to Ward's combat round, regardless of being hit or already landing a blow. And that means that he's one of the few units we have who's going to be able to land more than 1 attack in 1 combat round. At the start of turn 2, we get a brief cutscene, and then 2 new units appear on the map. These are Dean, the Axe Fighter, and Izerna, the Cleric, and I'm going to immediately move Dean, which is part of my strategy for making this turn as reliable as possible. At the start of the turn, there are 2 enemies between my units and the boss sitting on a choke point, and I need to remove him. Fortunately, thanks to the interleaved turn system, moving Dean means that one of the 2 units between me and the boss moves out of the way on his own, so I do not have to kill him. I actually originally expected that I was going to have to 5-turn this map because of this boss's inconvenient position, because he is very difficult to kill with a single unit. The first thing I do is have one of my spear knights, Adel, and my horseman, Sherlock, attack this spear fighter in an attempt to remove him without using up Ward's turn. This requires Adel to hit his first attack so that he gets the bonus damage from moving before attacking with a spear, as well as the enemy counter-attacking and Adel hitting that attack too. He's helped with this by his Vantage skill, which means that he doesn't risk having his attack blocked by being hit. Sherlock landing his mid-60s bow hit is unfortunately unreliable, and so Ward did have to step in here, but this is one of the steps I took to make this clear theoretically a bit more reliable. Finally, we have my other spear knight, Leon, move up to attack the boss, and he is well and truly the MVP of this map, thanks to his superb skill, Deathmatch. Deathmatch initiates a guaranteed 5 rounds of combat, while also lifting the restrictions on counterattacks and follow-ups, meaning Leon gets a guaranteed 10 attacks to break through this boss and his annoying shield. In this game, shields essentially have a hit rate where they randomly grant their defense bonus, and that makes dealing with this pretty annoying and unreliable. The other optimizations we have going on here are having Leon in range of Reese's commander skill and Adel's supporter skill to give him 98 listed hit as well as 4% crit, which didn't come into play but was one of the things theoretically making this combat more reliable to win. After defeating the mid-boss, Leon fails to activate Canto, and that's because in this game, Canto requires you to not get hit during the combat, and Deathmatch obviously doesn't lift that restriction. However, we wouldn't want Leon to Canto here in any case, because if he did, he would move into a space that Reese has to reach on this turn, or if we moved him one back, the enemies would move into that space instead. Where Reese lands on this turn is exactly 2 moves away from the seize point when you take into account the fact that he has to dismount in order to enter the seize point. And that means that Reese really cannot afford to lose any movement spaces on this turn. After demonstrating his adept skill, Reese appears to end up blocked, but remember that because of the interleaved turns, we are going to have an opportunity to make that spearman move out of the way without needing to kill him. At the start of turn 3, another event goes off, and unfortunately this is one that I'm not going to have the manpower to reach. It's annoying because visiting that house does give a material that could be used to craft a weapon later on, but I just don't have the manpower to get there, so I have to let it go. Now that the mid-boss is out of the way, let's take a moment to talk about what Dean has been doing. Firstly, Dean has been attacked at one range a couple of times, and he's dodged but not counter-attacked. And that's because of the difference in Berwick Saga between 0 range and 1 range. Both of these ranges attack an enemy who is 1 space away, but they are considered different ranges for the purposes of counter-attacking, although 0 range weapons are able to counter-attack 1 range attacks if the unit is fast enough. Dean, however, is not, so that hand axe guy is getting away uncountered. Dean also has a couple of pretty handy skills that he's made use of to kill several enemies. The first of these is Adept, which is another RNG-based skill, but, you know, we take those when they go off. And the second is Vengeful, which is a skill that's original to this game, and it allows Dean to counterattack even if he gets hit, with significantly greater power. And that's killed off at least 1 enemy so far. The reason Dean is doing anything at all is that on previous attempts I have had trouble with some of these enemies getting in Reese's way right at the end, even after managing to pull off killing the boss. So I changed strategies and had Dean move in and start to kill some of them, with support from Izerna. Izerna is a healer, and she has the Blessing skill, which heals a little bit of HP to nearby allies at the start of each turn. Between that and her healing spell, she's been keeping Dean in good health in order to keep going on his killing spree. And Dean's been quite successful there, because with Reese's movement on this turn, he is now within range to seize on the next turn, as long as the tile with the archer on it is clear. Of course, we also have to clear the boss of the seize point, and to that end, Leon is using a vulnerary on this turn instead of attacking. He got this vulnerary on drop from killing the first boss, and he's going to need all the HP that he can get in order to survive his encounter with the second one. Something that's a little unfortunate about this strategy is that I don't have the time to kill any of the rather large number of enemies with a range of droppable items, including a fair bit of money. I would really like to have some of those, but all of my heavy damage dealers are far too busy making sure that Reese can get over to the seize point as quickly as possible, and I just don't have anyone spare to kill them off. I have an uncomfortable feeling that I'm going to be really struggling with resource management in this game if this sort of thing keeps up. Of note during this turn is that Reese keeps getting hit, and he ends up at pretty low HP, which had me really worried for the last turn of the map. I actually had never seen him get hit nearly this much, so it surprised me that this was how the RNG played out when I finally got my successful run. There are a few more things that I would like to comment on before moving into discussing my turn 4 strategy. The first of these is the growth in my weapon ranks. So in this game there is no skill stat, but each weapon rank can grow when you level up, and it can also grow at random as you gain equipment experience through combat. Unfortunately, all of this is more RNG, but, you know, if it happens, it happens. And the thing about weapon ranks in this game is that you don't actually need to meet the weapon rank in order to use a weapon. Instead, if you use a weapon that's higher than your weapon rank, there's a chance that you'll fail to use it and nothing will happen when it would otherwise have worked. Additionally, certain extra effects will not take effect if you don't meet the required weapon rank, such as the Night Sword's extra attack. If I was to put that on Reese and have him use it, he would not get that extra effect because his weapon level in swords isn't high enough yet. Another thing worth noting is that horses are actual equipment in this game. They can take damage during combat, they have their own HP stats, and if they die, you're forced dismounted for the remainder of the map. Also, some horses give stat bonuses. The ones all of my units are riding at the moment is a Sinon Stallion, which gives +2 to speed. Alright, let's talk strategy. My two boss killers, which is going to be Ward and Leon, are in position to attack the boss, but I do not want them to attack right now because the boss has a vulnerary and he hasn't used up his turn yet. So if I attack him, he can just vulnerary off 20 of the damage that I managed to put on him, and I don't want that to happen because killing him with Leon's deathmatch is pretty unreliable. Dean is able to deal little enough damage in a single hit that the boss doesn't think he needs to use his vulnerary, but I had to have Dean kill one of the other enemies in order to make a path for my mounted units to reach the boss. For this, he made use of his Desperation skill, which, like the Deathmatch skill, lifts restrictions on following up and counterattacking for both the user and the target. Desperation also increases his hit rate and the hit rate of the enemy against him, as well as reducing his defense to 0. But in this case, since the enemy was going to die in one hit, it was well worth it. In the end, the boss takes so long to take his action that I am forced to go right across the map to the 2 new units who joined on the start of turn 4 and use one of their actions to get him to move. When they show up on the map, one of them says something along the lines of Ward being so strong that he will have finished the entire enemy off before they even get there, and that turns out to be surprisingly accurate on this clear, although it's not Ward alone who's doing the work here. Leon takes an unfortunately large beating here, which means that his upcoming combat with the boss is extremely risky, but I have all of my possible support units in range, so we had to make do with what we got. The first unit to attack the boss is going to be Ward, because he has the lower risk of death, and also I want Leon to get the kill if possible. And Ward is lucky enough to get 2 full hits in on the boss, without him using his shield to block part of the damage. Leon then comes in to deathmatch the boss, and I am immensely grateful that Ward managed to deal so much damage there, because Leon ends the combat on low enough HP that one more hit from the boss would have killed him off. And furthermore, the boss gets a whole string of shield blocks in a row, which means that Leon is chipping him down at a rate of 1 hit point per attack. Thankfully, this boss's defense is 1 point lower than the mid-bosses, which leads to his death at Leon's hands after a couple of rounds of combat. And that leaves Reese free to finally move in and seize, completing the chapter in 4 turns. And I gotta say, if this keeps up, I'm really worried about what I've let myself in for. See you all next time.